The convoy had been stopped for 3 minutes when Petty Officer Jake Hammer Morrison realized they weren't alone in the jungle. The radio crackled with barely audible whispers. Multiple contacts were surrounded. Estimate 50-plus hostiles. His SEAL team was supposed to be extracting a high-value intelligence asset from deep in the Colombian jungle, but instead they'd driven straight into an ambush that had been waiting for them with the patience of predators. The trees pressed in from all sides, dark and suffocating. Somewhere in that green maze, enemy fighters were closing the noose. Morrison could hear his own heartbeat, feel the sweat running down his spine despite his training. This was how operators died, trapped on a jungle road with nowhere to run and an enemy that knew every tree, every shadow, every kill zone. Then, from the darkness beyond their perimeter, came a sound that made the hair on his neck stand up, the distinctive crack of an M4 configured for precision shooting. One shot, one enemy fighter dropped, then another shot, another kill. Someone was out there in the jungle, hunting the hunters. And when Staff Sergeant Maya Wood finally emerged from the tree line with her rifle still smoking and 17 confirmed kills behind her, the SEALs learned a lesson that special operations instructors had been teaching for years. The most dangerous operator is the one you never see coming, especially when she's been tracking you for 3 days and knows this jungle better than you know your own base. The mission briefing had been straightforward, which should have been Maya's first warning. 8 years in Army Special Operations had taught her that straightforward was a word used by people who sat in air-conditioned command centers and never had to dodge bullets in triple canopy jungle. Your team will provide overwatch for the SEAL extraction operation, the briefing officer had said, pointing at the satellite imagery of Colombian jungle that looked like green hell even from space. They're pulling out a cartel informant who's got intelligence on weapons trafficking routes. Your job is to position on the high ground here. He tapped a ridgeline on the map, and provide early warning and sniper support if needed. Maya had studied the terrain with the intensity that had kept her alive through 3 combat deployments. The ridge overlooked a single-lane dirt road that wound through the jungle like a snake, limited visibility due to vegetation. No alternate routes for vehicles. The kind of terrain that turned routine extractions into ambushes if someone was smart enough and patient enough to prepare properly. What's the threat assessment? She'd asked. Local cartel security, maybe 10 fighters with small arms. Nothing your team can't handle from elevated position. That should have been her second warning. Maya had operated in Colombia before. She knew that local cartel security could mean anything from teenagers with pistols to ex-military contractors with training that matched her own. And maybe 10 fighters probably meant 20, possibly more if someone had leaked the operation. But orders were orders. Maya and her 3-person sniper team, Rodriguez on the spotter scope, Chen on communications, and Jackson on rear security, had infiltrated 3 days before the scheduled extraction. They'd moved through the jungle using techniques Maya had perfected over years of operations in environments where the vegetation was so thick you couldn't see 10 feet in any direction. The insertion had been by helicopter at night, fast roping into a clearing 5 kilometers from their objective. They'd buried their ropes, camouflaged the landing zone, and disappeared into the jungle before anyone could mark their position. Then they'd moved slowly, carefully, taking 4 hours to cover distance they could have walked in 40 minutes. Because in jungle operations, speed got you killed. Patience kept you alive. They'd reached the ridgeline and set up their hide position with the thoroughness that separated professional snipers from amateurs. Natural camouflage, minimal disturbance to surrounding vegetation, clear sight lines to the road below, and multiple escape routes if their position was compromised. Rodriguez had set up the spotting scope. Chen had established communications with the command center. And Jackson had positioned himself to watch their back trail. For 3 days, they'd waited, eating cold rations, drinking water they'd purified from a nearby stream, watching the road through their optics, cataloging every vehicle, every person, every pattern, learning the terrain the way a surgeon learns anatomy, intimately, completely, until every tree and shadow was mapped in Maya's memory. And during those 3 days, Maya had noticed things that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up, fresh boot prints that didn't match local patterns, radio chatter in the distance that suggested organized military communications, movement in the jungle that was too coordinated, too disciplined to be random farmers or hunters. "Someone's setting up an ambush," she'd told Rodriguez on the second day, watching through her rifle scope as men moved through the trees below. "Look at the positioning. They're establishing a kill zone on the road." Rodriguez had glassed the area with his spotting scope, counting positions. "I make it 15, no 20 fighting positions, heavy weapons. This isn't cartel security. This is a professional military operation." Maya had immediately called it into command. "Overwatch 1 to base. We have enemy force on objective. Estimate 20-plus hostiles with crew-served weapons establishing ambush positions along extraction route. Recommend a board and find alternate exfil point." The response had been predictable. "Base to Overwatch 1. SEAL element is already inbound. Maintain position and provide support. Do not compromise your hide site." Translation: the operation was too far along to cancel, too politically important to delay. The SEALs would be driving into a prepared ambush, and Maya's team was expected to somehow tip the scales from their position 700 meters away. "This is going to be bad," Jackson had muttered from his position. "Yeah," Maya had agreed, "so we better be perfect." She'd spent the next 24 hours planning shots, measuring distances, calculating for wind, humidity, temperature, identifying high-value targets, the enemy leaders, the crew-served weapon operators, anyone who looked like they were coordinating the ambush. Her rifle, an M4 that she'd personally modified for precision work, was zeroed for exactly these conditions. She'd made shots like this before, in Afghanistan and Iraq, in places that didn't appear on official deployment records, but never with this much on the line. Never with an entire SEAL team depending on her ability to turn a disaster into something survivable. The SEAL convoy had appeared exactly on schedule, 3 vehicles moving down the jungle road at cautious speed, every operator alert, weapons ready. Maya could see their tension even from her elevated position. They knew something was wrong. Good operators always knew when they were being watched. The convoy made it 200 meters into the kill zone before the enemy sprang the trap. The ambush was textbook perfect, which meant it was designed by someone who'd studied American tactics and knew exactly how to kill them. The lead vehicle hit an IED that had been buried in the road, the explosion flipping the armored SUV onto its side and blocking the forward route. Simultaneously, RPGs streaked out from both sides of the road, targeting the middle and rear vehicles. Heavy machine gun fire erupted from concealed positions, tracer rounds creating a web of death across the kill zone. The SEALs reacted with the speed that came from years of training, bailing out of vehicles, returning fire, trying to establish a defensive perimeter. But they were in the worst possible position, trapped on a narrow road with limited cover, taking fire from elevated positions on both sides, with their route forward blocked and their route backward under fire. Maya watched through her scope as the tactical situation developed with nightmare clarity. The SEALs were good, better than good. They were among the best operators in the world. But skill only mattered if you had room to maneuver, and the ambush had been designed specifically to eliminate that option. "Command, this is Overwatch 1, Chen was saying into the radio, his voice tight with controlled urgency. "SEAL element is in contact. Heavy casualties expected. They need immediate support." "Overwatch 1, what support can you provide?" Maya made the calculation in seconds. From her position, she could see 17 distinct enemy fighting positions. Her team had 4 rifles, Even if they were perfect, and in combat nobody was perfect, they couldn't eliminate enough targets fast enough to break the ambush before the SEALs were overwhelmed. "Rodriguez," she said quietly, "count our ammunition." He checked their loadout. "You've got 60 rounds of match grade. I've got 40 standard. Jackson and Chen have their basic combat loads, 60 rounds, 17 enemy positions, most of them with multiple fighters. The math was brutal. "Here's what we're doing," Maya said, her voice carrying the absolute calm that came when fear transformed into focus. "I'm going down there." The silence that followed was the sound of 3 operators processing what they just heard. Then Rodriguez said carefully, "Maya, if you leave this position, you'll be in the jungle with an unknown number of hostiles and no support. I'll be mobile. I'll be able to flank their positions, and I'll be doing what I do best." She was already preparing her gear, checking her rifle, ensuring every magazine was seated properly. "You 3 stay here. Provide what fire support you can. Call for air support, medevac, whatever you can get. But those SEALs down there are dying right now, and I'm the only asset close enough to do something about it." "This is insane," Jackson said. "Probably," Maya agreed, "but it's also necessary. Rodriguez, you're team leader until I get back. If I'm not back in 2 hours, assume I'm KIA and extract using Route Charlie." She didn't wait for acknowledgement. She'd made her decision, and second-guessing would only waste time that the SEALs didn't have. Maya slipped over the ridgeline and disappeared into the jungle, moving with the fluid silence that she'd learned from indigenous trackers in a dozen different countries. The jungle closed around her like a living thing. Thick vegetation that limited sightlines to meters, sounds that could be wind or movement, shadows that played tricks on perception. But Maya had spent 3 days learning this terrain. She knew the paths, the clearings, the spots where the undergrowth thinned enough to allow rapid movement. She moved toward the sound of gunfire, using the noise to mask her approach. Every few meters she'd pause, listen, scan her surroundings through her rifle scope. The enemy fighters were focused on the road, on the SEALs they were trying to kill. They weren't watching their flanks, weren't expecting a threat from the jungle behind them. That was going to be a fatal mistake. Maya found her first target 70 meters from the road, a heavy machine gun position with 3 fighters. The gunner was firing controlled bursts at the SEALs. His assistant was feeding ammunition. The 3rd fighter was spotting, calling out targets. She dropped prone behind a fallen log, settled her rifle, controlled her breathing. The range was 120 meters through dense vegetation. Not an easy shot, but well within her capabilities. She found the gunner in her scope, made micro-adjustments for the minimal wind, and pressed the trigger. The suppressed shot was barely audible over the ongoing firefight. The gunner collapsed across his weapon. Before his assistant could react, Maya had shifted her aim and fired again. The assistant dropped. The spotter was turning, trying to identify the threat, when her 3rd shot found him. 3 down, 14 positions to go. Maya moved immediately, knowing that staying in one place after shooting was suicide. She flowed through the jungle like water, using every scrap of cover, keeping vegetation between herself and potential threats. Behind her, she heard confused shouting as the enemy tried to figure out what had happened to their machine gun position. Her second target was an RPG team preparing to fire at the trapped SEAL convoy. 2 fighters, one with a launcher, one with spare rockets. Maya settled into a firing position behind a tree, acquired both targets in quick succession. 2 shots, 2 seconds apart. Both fighters dropped. The enemy was starting to realize they had a problem. Maya could hear orders being shouted in Spanish, fighters being repositioned to deal with a threat from their flank. But they didn't know where she was, couldn't see her through the jungle vegetation, couldn't predict where she'd appear next. She found a sniper position in a tree. Professional hide, good sightlines to the road. The sniper was so focused on his scope that he never saw Maya until she put a round through his torso. He fell from the tree like a broken doll. 6 down, 11 positions to go. The enemy was adapting now, pulling fighters back from the road assault to search the jungle. Maya could hear them moving through the vegetation, less disciplined than her, noisier, using flashlights that advertised their positions. She avoided them, circling around to hit another machine gun position from an unexpected angle. This time, there were 4 fighters. Maya dropped the first 2 with rapid shots, but the third got his weapon up and fired a burst in her direction. Bullets tore through the vegetation above her head as she rolled behind cover. The 4th fighter was moving to flank her position when Rodriguez's rifle cracked from the ridge, the spotter taking a long-range shot that dropped the fighter. Maya used the distraction to eliminate the 3rd fighter, then moved again before they could coordinate a response. She was burning through ammunition faster than she'd planned, but the alternative was letting the SEALs die. Her radio crackled. "Overwatch 1, this is SEAL 6. We've got wounded, we're low on ammo, and we're about 30 seconds from being overrun. Whatever you're doing out there, do it faster." Maya checked her remaining ammunition. 20 rounds in her current magazine, 2 more full magazines. 60 rounds total when she'd started, now down to 40-something. And she'd only cleared about 8 enemy positions. The math still didn't work. Unless she changed the math. She'd been avoiding the enemy command position, a cluster of fighters with better gear, better weapons, and radio equipment. They were coordinating the ambush, adjusting tactics, trying to contain her while still maintaining pressure on the SEALs. Taking them out would be high risk, but it would also decapitate the enemy's decision-making. Maya moved toward the command position with aggressive speed now, abandoning some of her earlier caution because time was running out. She could see them through the trees, 6 fighters, maybe 7, clustered around a man who was clearly giving orders. She dropped into a firing position at 90 meters, close, very close for this kind of engagement. Through her scope, she identified the leader first. 1 shot, center mass. He dropped. Then, she shifted to the radio operator, eliminated communication. Then, the 2 fighters who looked most competent, most dangerous. 4 shots, 4 seconds, 4 enemy down. The remaining fighters scattered, but Maya tracked one and dropped him before he could find cover. Another was running toward the road. She led him slightly, squeezed the trigger, saw him fall. The last fighter had gone to ground, was trying to get a shot on her position. Maya rolled left as his rifle cracked, felt the bullet pass close enough to hear. She came up in a new position, found him through her scope, fired. He didn't get up. 11 positions cleared. The ambush was collapsing, the coordinated assault turning into chaos as the enemy lost leadership and heavy weapons. The SEALs were pressing their advantage now, maneuvering out of the kill zone, eliminating the remaining threats with the efficiency of professionals who'd been given a second chance. Maya keyed her radio. "SEAL 6, this is Overwatch 1. Enemy command is eliminated. You've got maybe a dozen hostiles still active, but they're disorganized. Recommend aggressive assault to break the ambush." "Overwatch 1, understood. Who the hell are you and how many of you are out there?" "Just me, and I'm about to run out of ammunition, so whatever you're going to do, do it fast." She heard laughter over the radio, the slightly manic sound that came after surviving something that should have killed you. "Copy that. Overwatch 1, we're moving. And when this is over, you've got a drink waiting." Maya maintained Overwatch as the SEALs executed their breakout, dropping 2 more enemy fighters who tried to organize a defense, 1 more who was setting up another RPG position. Her magazine ran dry and she reloaded her last one, 20 rounds remaining. The SEALs fought through the remaining resistance with brutal efficiency, their training and superior tactics overwhelming an enemy that had lost its coordination. Within 10 minutes, the kill zone was secure, the surviving enemy fighters either dead or running into the jungle. Maya waited until she was certain the threat was contained, then began the careful movement back toward her team's position. She'd been operating in hostile territory for nearly 40 minutes, had burned through most of her ammunition, and had pushed her luck further than any rational operator should. She was halfway back to the ridge when she heard movement behind her, too close, too quiet to be friendly. Maya spun, bringing her rifle up, and found herself face to face with an enemy fighter who'd somehow gotten behind her position. He had his AK-47 raising, his finger moving to the trigger, and Maya knew she was about to get shot. She dove left as he fired, felt rounds crack past her head. Her own rifle came up and she fired twice, center mass, the fundamental marksmanship that never failed. The fighter dropped, but his burst had been close, too close. Maya could feel her hands shaking with the adrenaline dump, the realization of how narrow that margin had been. "Overwatch 1, this is Rodriguez." What was that shooting? Contact. It's handled. I'm continuing to rally point. Copy. And Maya. That was the most insane thing I've ever watched someone do. Remind me never to piss you off. She made it back to her team's position as the sun was starting to set, turning the jungle into a cathedral of green-gold light. Rodriguez, Chen, and Jackson were packing their gear, preparing to move. They looked at her with expressions that mixed relief and disbelief. 17 confirmed kills, Rodriguez said quietly. I was spotting for you the whole time. 17 enemy fighters, most of them eliminated before they knew you were there. That's legend-level shooting, Maya. It was necessary shooting, Maya corrected, and it's only legend if we get out of here alive. Let's move before someone decides to come looking for us. They extracted through the jungle, using a different route than their insertion, moving through the night with night vision equipment and the paranoia that came from operating in hostile territory. It took them 8 hours to reach the pickup point, where a helicopter extracted them back to the forward operating base. The SEALs were there waiting, cleaned up but still carrying the marks of combat, bandaged wounds, exhaustion in their eyes, the particular look that came from surviving something that should have killed you. The team leader, a lieutenant commander whose call sign was Hammer, approached Maya as she stepped off the helicopter. Staff Sergeant Wood, I understand we owe you our lives. You owe your lives to your own training and the fact that you didn't panic under fire, Maya said. I just changed the odds a little. A little? Hammer laughed. You single-handedly broke an ambush that had us dead to rights. The after-action count shows 17 enemy killed in action attributed to precise rifle fire from mobile positions in the jungle. That's not changing the odds a little. That's surgical violence executed at a level I've rarely seen. I was doing my job. Your job was providing overwatch from a ridge position. What you did was abandon a safe position, infiltrate into enemy-controlled jungle, and conduct a solo direct action mission against superior numbers in terrain that gave them every advantage. He studied her with newfound respect. The SEALs don't forget debts, Sergeant Wood. You ever need anything, you've got a whole team willing to return the favor. Maya was about to respond when her commanding officer appeared, a colonel who didn't look pleased. Staff Sergeant Wood, a word. She followed him away from the others, already knowing what was coming. Sir, you abandoned your assigned position, conducted unauthorized direct action, and placed yourself at extreme risk without proper coordination with higher headquarters. The colonel's voice was stern, but his eyes showed something else. Pride mixed with exasperation. Do you have any idea how much paperwork I'm going to have to file to explain this? Yes, sir. Probably more than you'd have to file if I'd stayed in position and watched those SEALs die. The colonel was quiet for a moment. Then he sighed. You're right. You're also insubordinate, reckless, and apparently incapable of following a simple Overwatch mission without turning it into something from an action movie. I should write you up for a dozen different violations. Yes, sir. Instead, I'm recommending you for a Silver Star and a promotion. Because what you did today saved American lives, demonstrated exceptional skill under impossible circumstances, and showed exactly the kind of initiative we need in special operations. He paused. But Maya, next time you decide to go full lone wolf operator in enemy territory, at least tell someone before you disappear into the jungle. My heart can't take this kind of stress. Understood, sir. He walked away, leaving Maya standing alone in the fading light. She looked down at her rifle, the weapon that had served her so well in the jungle, that had made 17 precise shots in conditions that would have challenged any sniper. It needed cleaning, maintenance, care. But first, she needed to process what she'd done. 17 enemies eliminated, a SEAL team saved, a mission that should have been a disaster turned into a success through nothing but skill, courage, and the willingness to do what was necessary, even when it seemed impossible. Maya Wood had emerged from the darkness with her rifle blazing and reminded everyone why special operations existed, because sometimes conventional forces couldn't do the job. Sometimes you needed someone who could operate alone, think independently, and execute violence with surgical precision. Sometimes you needed an operator who understood that the mission always came first, even when that meant walking into hell with nothing but a rifle and the absolute certainty that she could make a difference. The SEALs had whispered that their convoy was surrounded. Maya had answered by proving that one operator with the right skills in the right place could turn the tide of an entire engagement. That was her job. That was what she did. And the jungle would remember. 3 months later, Maya stood in front of a classified awards board receiving recognition that would never appear on her official record. The mission had been scrubbed from all documentation. Officially, no American forces had conducted operations in that region of Colombia. The ambushed convoy, the 17 enemy casualties, the lone sniper who'd saved them, none of it existed in the historical record. But in the special operations community, the story spread. The Army sniper who'd abandoned her position to save a SEAL team, who'd moved through hostile jungle like a ghost, who'd made 17 precision shots under combat conditions that should have been impossible. Some of the details got exaggerated. That was inevitable. But the core truth remained. One operator, one rifle, 17 enemies eliminated, 0 friendly casualties. Lieutenant Commander Hammer attended the ceremony, along with several members of his SEAL team. After the awards, he approached Maya with a quiet smile. "The offer still stands, Sergeant Wood. You ever want to try out for the teams, you let me know. We could use someone with your particular skill set." Maya smiled. "I appreciate the offer, sir. But I'm Army. We do things differently than you Navy types." "Different how?" "We don't need a whole team to get the job done. Sometimes one soldier with a rifle is all it takes." Hammer laughed. "Fair point, but the offer stands. And Maya, that thing you did in the jungle? That's going to be taught at sniper schools for the next 20 years. They're calling it Wood's Gambit, the tactical decision to abandon a secure position and conduct mobile operations in hostile territory to break an ambush. They're giving it a name?" "Of course. Everything in the military gets a name eventually, usually a boring acronym, but sometimes something that actually sounds cool." He extended his hand. "Thanks again. For everything." Maya shook his hand, feeling the calluses that marked another operator who knew what it meant to serve in dangerous places. "Just doing my job, sir." "No, you went way beyond your job, and that made all the difference." He paused, then pulled out a small velvet box from his pocket. "The team wanted you to have this. It's not official, won't show up on any paperwork, but it means something to us." Inside the box was a SEAL trident pin, the iconic insignia that marked membership in one of the world's most elite fighting forces. But this one was different. It had been modified, engraved on the back with 17 small tally marks and the words, "One shot, one life saved. Colombia 2024. We each contributed 1 mark," Hammer explained quietly. 17 marks for 17 enemies you eliminated. 17 reasons we're all still breathing. In the teams, we take care of our own. And after what you did, you're one of ours. Honorary, unofficial, and completely against regulations, but ours nonetheless. Maya held the trident, feeling the weight of it. Not the physical weight. The metal was light, but the symbolic weight of being accepted by operators who didn't give respect easily, who'd seen her at her absolute best when everything was on the line. "I can't wear this," she said, her voice thick with emotion she rarely allowed herself to feel. "We know. That's why we put it in a box. Keep it somewhere private. Look at it when you're having a bad day. Remember that 17 men went home to their families because you were willing to risk everything." Hammer's expression turned serious. "And Maya? The next time command gives you some bullshit Overwatch-only mission and you know in your gut that something's wrong, trust that gut. We did, and we're alive because of it." Rodriguez appeared at Maya's side, her spotter from the operation. "The brass is calling it unauthorized initiative. The rest of us are calling it saving our asses. I've been on 12 deployments, worked with dozens of snipers, never seen anything like what you did that day." "The situation required adaptation," Maya said simply. The situation required balls of steel and shooting skills that most snipers only dream about, Rodriguez corrected. I was on that spotting scope, watching you move through that jungle. You were outnumbered, outgunned, operating in their backyard, and you still made every shot count. That's not just training, that's something else. Something that separates good operators from legendary ones. Chen and Jackson joined them, completing the reunion of the team that had spent 3 days in that jungle hide position. Chen spoke up. Command wants to send us on another operation. Similar profile, Overwatch for a SEAL extraction, different country. They specifically requested you as team leader, said something about needing someone who thinks creatively under pressure. Maya raised an eyebrow. That's their way of saying they need someone willing to break the rules when the rules are going to get people killed. Exactly, Jackson confirmed with a grin. So are you in? She looked at the trident in her hand, then at the faces around her, operators who'd seen her at her best, who trusted her judgment, who knew that sometimes the right decision was the one that looked wrong on paper. When do we leave? 72 hours, better start packing. 6 months after that ceremony, Maya was back in the jungle, a different country, a different mission, but the same fundamental truth. There were bad people doing bad things and someone needed to stop them. Sometimes that someone was an entire team, sometimes it was a whole battalion, and sometimes it was one operator with a rifle, emerging from darkness to remind everyone that in special operations, numbers didn't matter as much as skill, courage, and the willingness to do what others couldn't. This time, the mission went smoothly. The SEALs extracted their target without contact. Maya's team provided overwatch from their elevated position and never had to fire a shot. It was, by all official measures, a perfect operation. But Maya kept her rifle ready anyway, kept scanning the jungle, kept watching for the signs that an ambush was developing, because she'd learned that perfect operations could turn deadly in seconds, and the price of complacency was measured in body bags. As they extracted via helicopter, Rodriguez leaned over and shouted over the rotor noise, "Disappointed we didn't get to shoot anyone?" Maya shook her head. Best missions are the ones where nobody dies, but if someone had to die, I'd rather it be them than us. That's the difference between you and most operators, Rodriguez observed. Most people want the fight. You're willing to fight, but you'd rather solve problems without violence, until violence becomes necessary, and then you're the most violent person in the room. That's what makes a good operator, Maya said. Knowing when to shoot and when to hold fire. Any idiot can pull a trigger. It takes wisdom to know when pulling that trigger is the right call. Back at base, her commanding officer approached with news. Wood, your Silver Star came through. Official ceremony in 2 weeks. Your family's invited, the whole 9 yards. Can I skip it, sir? I'm not big on ceremonies. No, you cannot skip it. You did something extraordinary, and the Army wants to recognize that. Even if 90% of what you did is still classified, we can at least acknowledge that you demonstrated exceptional valor under fire. He softened slightly. Maya, take the recognition. You earned it. And more importantly, it sends a message to every young soldier who thinks women can't operate at the highest levels. You proved they can. Own that. The ceremony was held at Fort Bragg, attended by senior officers, fellow special operations personnel, and Maya's team. Her parents flew in from Oregon, her father, a retired Marine, wearing his dress uniform with pride. Her mother, a schoolteacher who'd never fully understood what her daughter did for a living, crying quietly as the citation was read aloud. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against an enemy of the United States. The words felt hollow to Maya. She hadn't been thinking about gallantry when she'd left that ridge position. She'd been thinking about SEALs dying while she watched from safety. She'd been thinking that having the skills to help and choosing not to use them was worse than any physical danger. After the ceremony, a young female soldier approached. Couldn't have been more than 20, fresh out of basic training, stars in her eyes. Ma'am, I want to do what you do. I want to be a sniper. Can you give me any advice? Maya looked at the young soldier, seeing herself a decade earlier, eager, determined, ready to prove herself in a field dominated by men who didn't think she belonged. Best advice I can give you. Be twice as good as everyone else, work twice as hard, and never, ever give up just because someone tells you that you can't do something. The only person who gets to decide your limits is you. But how do I get selected for sniper school? How do I prove I'm good enough? You start by mastering fundamentals: marksmanship, fieldcraft, physical fitness, mental toughness. You make yourself so undeniably competent that they can't ignore you. And when they give you a chance, and they will give you a chance eventually, you don't just meet the standard. You exceed it so completely that they have no choice but to accept that you belong. The young soldier nodded, determination hardening her features. Thank you, ma'am. I won't let you down. Don't worry about letting me down. Worry about meeting your own standards. Make them so high that everyone else has to rise to meet you. The jungle was her element, the darkness was her friend, and her rifle spoke with a voice that enemies learned to fear. Staff Sergeant Maya Wood, the operator who'd saved a SEAL team single-handedly, the sniper who'd made 17 precision shots in conditions that should have been impossible, the woman who'd proven that sometimes the most dangerous person on the battlefield was the one you never saw until it was too late. And now, the mentor who would inspire a new generation of operators, male and female, who understood that excellence knew no gender, that courage came in all forms, and that sometimes one person with the right skills at the right time could change everything. She kept the sealed trident in a small box in her gear room, along with other mementos from operations that officially never happened. Sometimes, on bad days when the memories got too heavy, she'd take it out and remember what it represented. 17 people alive because she'd been willing to risk everything. 17 families who got to see their loved ones again. 17 reasons why her choice to leave that ridge position had been the right one. Even if it had violated every protocol in the book, the jungle remembered. The SEALs remembered. And Maya Wood would carry those memories forward into whatever darkness waited next, with her rifle ready and her resolve unshaken. Because that was her job. That was what she